Welcome to Deep Fried Thoughts. Today I have with me Christopher Smith. Chris is one of the most creative people I have met, and Chris has a wonderful story to tell us today, something that I'm sure all of us will relate with. Chris, welcome to Deep Fried Thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Chris, let's begin the story with a LinkedIn post that you wrote that went viral, got responses from people that you were not expecting to hear from, and it
Yeah.
really hit a nerve with a lot of people. So, tell me about that post. What was it about?
I guess to back up, we have to start with a birthday. A few years ago, I had turned 59 years old. And at the time, the company that I was working for, they downsized. They moved everybody into freelance or contract mode. And so I started looking for new work. So my background is advertising and design and marketing. So I started looking at the, kind of typical companies that one might look to apply. And I found that I was having a very hard time actually finding new work. And this I would say is just over 2.5 years ago. And I really struggled. I have almost, 30 plus years in this industry across the variety of roles. But again, finding a role that fit what I do and what I'm passionate about was very challenging. And I started to talk to some friends of mine who were in key roles within HR or headhunting, trying to understand what I was doing wrong in the interview process. And what I had found out after a couple really, really honest conversations, it was my age that was actually keeping me from earning roles that I was well qualified for. At the time, I was 59 years old and still wanting a career, still absolutely energetic towards it, and was really baffled why I couldn't land that role. So I started to look at the issue of ageism. It's something that I had never thought about before. It's something that I had never thought I would encounter because I'm so well equipped in order to do the type of work that I do. I was fortunate enough to be invited into the AI space at a very early time, well before it was public. And I felt that armed with this knowledge and practice in this new technology, that would be just a force multiplier in securing a role. But it turned out that my work history was the thing that was flagging many of these automatic evaluators. So then I started looking at the concept of ageism, particularly in advertising, and there was a very compelling study that had just finished in the UK where they had interviewed thousands of people from the HR industry. And the biggest finding that jumped out to me was 53 years old was the expiration date that the industry considered on seasoned professionals within the ad agency. And at 53, when I look around my peer group, there's some really amazing, brilliant people who I started to find out were actually having the same journey as I, were struggling to find meaningful, impactful work. Because the industry is set up as a pyramid, the more senior you get, the less opportunity to fill a seat. So what happens? What happens to all of us who are getting older, getting wiser, gaining even more experience, establishing points of view that are only able to acquire over time? What happens when there's less seats at the table? And as I tend to do when I grab onto something in my head, I tend to write about it. Writing for me is a way to add structure and kind of formalize the thinking. And as I began trying to write about the things that I was learning, I published an article on LinkedIn that was just expressing what I was learning. And there was a phrase that I had written. I felt like I was being penalized at the epilogue of my journey. Here I was, I was in my third act. Okay, if you kind of think of it in a storytelling format, I'm at my third act, but there's more story to tell. So I'm going to write the epilogue of my next story. So my epilogue leading into the prologue of whatever I was going to do next. And then that led me into thinking about all the rest of the people just like me. So I published this article, and the response was unexpected and a bit overwhelming. My messages on LinkedIn filled up with people, and literally around the world.
Wow.
People from Europe, people from the Netherlands, people from South America, here in Singapore, where I live. People who were saying, wow, the same thing is happening to me, and I've never been able to express it in that fashion. And then what was most surprising was the invitations to speak with people. Chris, if you have time, could you jump on a call? I'd love to talk to you about your experience and how you're coping with that. And that became the beginning of what I now think about as the epilogue economy. It's it's that world that occupies the space above the 55 plus pull down that everybody encounters when they're filling out a form or filling out a survey. What is your age? 55 and above. And it's sort of, that's it. It's complete. And we're all pushed into that area. Um, and many times just forgotten about. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of this journey in trying to understand the challenges of older professionals and also the economics of that cohort, the people above 55 and what they actually bring to community, to business, to economies.
Sure. And I feel like, Chris, you giving it that term, epilogue
Mhm.
economy, sort of made a lot of people feel seen, like that
Yeah.
experience is being validated. One of the things that I have been told, the map of the world that I've been given is that if you have a strong network, you have skills, you're a student for life. So you're upskilling all the time. If you keep running
Hmm.
on that hamster wheel, you'll never be out of jobs. And from what I understand from you, that doesn't seem to hold anymore.
Yeah, very much so. And again, it's because I think of just the laws of scarcity. I have an amazing network that's been built over time, built across continents, built across industries. Like I say, I've been doing this type of work for a very long time. I teach, I mentor. So my Rolodex of people that I know is really deep. And I reached out to them, and every one of them had a sympathetic ear, but their hands are basically tied. Even if they see value in what you do, it doesn't necessarily mean that your network is able to put you back to work. They can offer um, a sympathetic ear. They can point you in directions, but it's very difficult to, in fact, what I'm finding, almost impossible to use your network successfully. Again,
Right.
because their hands are tied. There's only so many roles that are available.
Sure.
And then this requires you to start to think about what you're asking for of your friends or
Mhm.
what you're asking for in the next role.
Sure. So, Chris, you went ahead and radically accepted what is happening, gave it a
Mhm.
name. How did the journey pan out after that? I'd love
Yeah.
to hear how you have tried to get back a sense of agency around your career after that incident.
So, anybody who's been looking for work over a longer period of time, looking to try to get back into the game, right? For whatever reason that they got out of a role, now they're trying to step back in. You go through these roller coaster of emotions. What's wrong with the industry? What's wrong with me? And then it starts to knock on your self confidence. And then you start to second guess all of your career choices. And the emotional like burden of
Mhm.
trying to find a new role over an extended period of time really does make you question everything. And I found that I was moving towards those kind of, I wouldn't say dark, but gray areas of questioning my confidence, questioning my decisions, questioning where I lived. But I knew that if I didn't exercise my own agency and figure out a way to reverse kind of this sort of downward journey that I was taking
Mhm.
emotionally, that I would end up, going from light to gray to dark. Just that's human nature, right? You start to
Right.
panic, you start to struggle. So I took matters into my own hands and I just said, if people won't employ me, I'll employ myself. And I started my own company that I called Rock, Paper, Scissors. So this was 2.5 years ago. I'm 3 years into an AI journey. I have 30 years of experience in this industry. And I recognize that my experience harnessed or paired with the emerging space was actually a superpower.
Wow. Talk to me about that. What does that look like?
So the way I think about artificial intelligence and working with it is that I believe that you get the best results out of AI if you have better questions and can evaluate answers in a way that some people who just don't have the earned experience can evaluate. I know what good looks like because I've spent 30 years learning about what good looks like, both from
Absolutely.
my mentors, my teachers, my peers, and eventually with me leading various teams or business units. It was my taste, my judgment, and it inevitably made the call. This is good. This is great. This can be better. And through the lens of AI, my years of experience, I felt really became what I think about as a force multiplier. So I was able to harness that very quickly. I was able to not see my age as a liability, but start to frame it as I like to call it, my superpower. There are a few people who had my experience and my technical capabilities and my point of view. And so I just decided to package that.
Mhm.
And instead of worrying about what the next job was going to be, what someone was going to hire me, I decided that I was going to go ahead and finish my epilogue and write my prologue,
Love
start
that.
to write my next personal story.
Your next twist and turn. Could you tell us about experiments that you ran and how did that help you find your product market fit?
I'm a designer and a storyteller, so I do a lot of experiments all the time, right? And so I started experimenting with different narrative platforms, different ways of storytelling. So there was Instagram where I started to talk more about my journey and about the development of rock, paper, scissors. So, one of the things that I've always believed in is bringing people on the journey with you. And from the conversations that I had from that original LinkedIn post and actually being able to sit and speak with people one on one. So, what happens if I then expanded that and then
Mhm.
expanded it across the variety of platforms? Because obviously, you never know where a person is going to be at any point in time. Um, and I just decided I was going to take people on my building journey. And it did two things. One, it inspired other people to do the same thing. It inspired them to work to shift their own personal point of view, and to actually. I mean, there were even times when there were 15 of us on a call. I would host calls so that we could
Wow.
just sit and build companionship. You do feel very alone. And so I just started to offer my time to be there. But what I also found was that community also supported me. There was both comfort but also strength that I'm not alone in this journey, and we started to learn from each other. So I just continued to talk about the journey of building the company and talking about controlling my own destiny instead of waiting for someone else. That helped me regain confidence, share the journey was one of the best things that I was able to do, not just for myself, but now in retrospect for others.
No, and I love that. I think the story we tell ourselves is the most important story there is.
Yeah.
And from what I understand from you now, there was a story that you had before and after, which has changed dramatically for you. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to take this idea a little bit further. One of the traps that we fall into is the easiest story we can tell ourselves is the labels we carry, right? So I'm
Right.
Garima, I work in this organization. That is
Yeah.
how we tend to introduce ourselves. So how do you do that differently now? Who are you now that you don't have those same labels?
So that's a really it's a great question because the landscape is and the responses to this are mostly driven by what we read on things like LinkedIn or Instagram or whatnot. Other people are telling you build your personal brand.
Yep.
So of course, I'm a branding guy. Right away, I went to go build my personal brand, right? And that brand was rock, paper, scissors. But what I found over time, well, in fact, not only was it rock, paper, scissors, but I was the AI everything guy because I
Okay.
was 3 years ahead of the public pack, right? And so right away, I fell into the trap of branding myself based on the work that I did. And in about 6 months of trying to do that, what I recognized was that people were not hiring me because of the brand. They were hiring me because of me, because of my experience, because of my point of view, because of the way I carry myself in a room or in
Right.
conversations or how I think through a lens of, 30 years of understanding what good looks like. And so I shifted the terminology. I was no longer interested in building a personal brand. I wanted to build a personal presence. And I started focusing more on who was Christopher Smith, not what was rock, paper, scissors. Because inevitably, I'm in a one on one conversation. I'm drinking coffee with someone. I'm, at a hotel conference room on stage speaking,
Hmm.
and it's me that's speaking. And by shifting the focus on who I was able to start to let go of the safety net of my CV. Our life successes are not listed in our resume, listed on our LinkedIn. And most people, when you sit with them, they're more interested in your experiences. And because I was so open to change, I was learning to set aside the scaffolding of a 30-year career and really listen to how people responded to my points of view, my earned experience. And that started to give me a lot more confidence in stepping forward as Christopher Smith. And
Just this is interesting. And I just want to take a brief pause here and ask you, how uncomfortable is it? Because when
oh,
when you're invoicing via rock, paper, scissors, or while you are
yeah,
saying that, as a company, we are going to charge you this. But now
yeah.
suddenly you are the product and you're the person. So talk to me about that discomfort. Did you feel it? And if yes, what are you doing to mitigate it?
Yeah, I absolutely felt it because I've spent so many years saying, I am the vice president of production and distribution at company X. I am the executive creative. I am the executive producer, right?
Hmm.
We lead with labels. We lead with labels because they're easy and they're well understood because it's a common vocabulary. You say, I am the vice president of X, and somebody elevates you. So, so now I found myself to be the sole founder of Rock, Paper, Scissors. I have a 30-year history of working as a designer, as a film producer, as a storyteller, all these different strategists, account director. I've got a great list of clients that I have worked with over the history of my career. And then you sit down with somebody that you're meeting for the first time and they say, let me get to know you. And I would struggle. Am I a designer? Am I a founder? Am I a creative technologist? Am I a
Hmm.
storyteller? Because I was so focused on what somebody might buy. I wasn't focused on developing a relationship with another human being. And so I would struggle with what was the right label for the right moment. Even I saw that in like I had four versions of a resume.
Sure, we
Each
all
one of them shaped and crafted a little bit different, but none of them told anything about me. And so I found that yes, I was very uncomfortable trying to figure out what was my designation, what was I calling myself. It is a real big struggle, and you find that imposter syndrome does pop up when you're trying to reinvent yourself or restructure your own personal story, because you no longer have the safety net of a title, because you're now looking for new work. And the imposter syndrome comes up, and the lack of confidence, because 6 months or a year or 2 years ago, you were so confident in saying, I was X
fair
at
enough.
Y company. And now you're struggling to find out what is the right thing to hold on to, what is the right platform to place yourself on. The way I've been able to, in some ways, make friends with my imposter syndrome um, was based on a personal experience. I went to Paris with a partner, and it was our first trip there. And we looked up at the subway map,
Mhm.
and she panicked. She's like, oh my gosh, we're going to get lost. Look at how complicated this is. And I said, oh my gosh, look at how big this is. Think of all the places we can go.
I hear
And
you.
now and for me, that was an exciting landscape, right? She saw it as a challenge. I saw it as an opportunity. And so now anytime that my self-confidence tends to fall or my imposter syndrome creeps up, particularly before a meeting someone new or talking about a role that I might want, my device is I think about Paris. And in my head, I go, it's just like Paris. And then I remember that moment when the subway map of Paris showed only an opportunity to discover new things. And it's okay that I felt a little apprehensive, because I have never been here before. This is a new experience. It's a new person. It's a new office. It's a new role. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And it's just like Paris. And it very quickly puts me into a much more positive mindset. The struggles are still there. The questioning is still there, but it's less.
And I love that, Chris. It's extremely accessible because if we were to go and sit with
Yeah,
ourselves for a minute,
we all
there will
have
be
that.
micro moments which will tell us more about ourselves than
Yeah,
any CV that we have spent hours and yeah, years building. These are the micro moments that will tell you who you truly are. So I think
yeah.
that is super helpful. Chris, we will start with an advice you would give someone who is 55 years right now.
I would say yes. You have to treat looking for a job like a full-time job. So um, you do have to do that, but you have to get out of the room. You have to go read a book. You have to go on a walk. You have to go bowling. Whatever it is that allows you to reset and refresh. I made the mistake of, if I had 12 hours to fill, I filled it 12 hours of trying to find a new job, and that is not healthy. It's also not successful, because you just start to get in your way.
Awesome. How about a 45-year-old?
Um, a 45-year-old, I would say diversify as much as possible, and
Okay.
I'm not saying diversify financially. It's like learn to trust your earned experience. Learn to see that as value. Don't rest on it. Actually lean into it and learn to build upon it. Read, watch films, go on trips where you start to see the world differently, because that is going to turn into a superpower. Your point of view on life. Try to be a student of life, particularly as we get older. We need those kind of tools.
Absolutely. And you know where this is going, Chris. How about a 35-year-old?
Pay attention to money.
Okay.
The biggest mistake I ever made, I mean, hands down, was that I didn't pay attention to money. And money is a situation that helps, obviously, when unexpected things happen. When you find that you're out of work for an extended period, or maybe some health issues
Health.
or market changes.
The final age group, 25-year-old, the Gen Zs.
Sure. I think there is have as much fun as possible. And I say that because that's exactly what I did. Right?
Okay.
I experienced life to the fullest. I even delayed going to university because I didn't know what I wanted to be. It gave me an opportunity to experience life.
So, Chris, we're reaching
Yeah,
towards the end of this conversation, and I do want to take some time for you to introduce what you do.
sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So I have a company. It's called Rock, Paper, Scissors. My niece, she's 9 years old. She helped me name it.
Love that
Um,
name, by the way. It is,
yeah,
it
it's
sticks in your
fun.
mind.
Um, I I do write a Substack called Some Assembly Required. My point of view there is life does not give us an instruction manual. And there's going to be some assembly required in how we build our life. And we're kind of going to have to put the parts together. It's not like you open up an IKEA box and there's, very simple directions. Life is complicated and there's no owner's manual.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for this conversation. It takes
Sure.
courage to be vulnerable, it takes courage to say things as is. So, thank you for sharing your time. And I hope everyone who listens to it goes back with some food for thought.
You're welcome.